One ordinary morning, SpongeBob woke up feeling strangely different. His body felt heavy, and it was as if something was buzzing inside his head. As he reached to turn off his alarm, he realized he was extremely thirsty, so thirsty it felt like he hadn't had water in days. Struggling to get out of bed, he stumbled his way to the kitchen. Still half asleep, his eyes weren't fully open. But when he entered the kitchen, he immediately noticed a glass of green-colored water sitting on the table. It was unusual for water to be green, but SpongeBob was so thirsty he didn't care. Without thinking twice, he grabbed the glass, gulped it down in one go, and everything went black. As soon as he drank the water, he felt his head spinning. It was as if something inside his body was changing. Before he could figure out what was happening, he collapsed right there on the kitchen floor. Everything went dark, and SpongeBob remained unconscious for several hours. When he finally opened his eyes, he felt like he wasn't himself anymore. He went to the mirror and was horrified by what he saw. His skin was green and bruised, his eyes were sunken, and there was a terrifying, strange look on his face. SpongeBob had become a zombie, and the burning rage inside him was even more disturbing. SpongeBob didn't know what had happened to him, but one thing was clear: he couldn't stay in the house any longer. With a single, furious movement, he smashed through his front door and stepped into the streets of Bikini Bottom. The first person he encountered was one of his neighbors, who froze in shock at the sight of SpongeBob's horrifying appearance. The neighbor screamed and started running, but SpongeBob was faster. He attacked the neighbor, and within seconds, the poor resident of Bikini Bottom had also turned into a zombie. This was just the beginning of a nightmare. Consumed by rage, SpongeBob stormed through the streets, turning every single person he encountered into a zombie. Screams and strange, terrifying sounds echoed through the once cheerful town. Bikini Bottom, which had always been full of laughter and joy, was now dark and menacing. SpongeBob showed no mercy, and with each passing moment, his army of zombies grew larger and more unstoppable. As the chaos spread, SpongeBob's mind was struck by a sinister idea. Leading his ever-growing horde of zombies, he headed straight for the Krusty Krab. His goal was clear: total destruction. Inside the restaurant, Mr. Krabs was busy counting his money when he heard strange and horrifying noises outside. Peeking through the window, what he saw drained the color from his face. SpongeBob, now a terrifying zombie, was standing in the street, backed by a massive army of undead followers. Squidward, who was at the cash register at the time, immediately sensed that something was wrong. He ran to the supply room and grabbed an old spear he had stashed away for some reason. Meanwhile, Patrick, who had just stopped by the Krusty Krab for a Krabby Patty, initially thought he was dreaming when he saw SpongeBob's monstrous face. But when SpongeBob ripped the restaurant's front door off its hinges, Patrick realized the danger was all too real. Squidward and Patrick quickly teamed up to try to stop SpongeBob. Squidward readied his spear, while Patrick grabbed a random wooden stick for defense. But SpongeBob wasn't the same SpongeBob they knew. His strength had grown immensely, and his mercy had disappeared. SpongeBob charged at Squidward with lightning speed. Squidward tried to fend him off with the spear, but SpongeBob was too fast. With a powerful blow, SpongeBob threw Squidward against the wall, knocking him down. Patrick, who was trying to sneak up behind SpongeBob, realized too late that he stood no chance. SpongeBob turned on him with terrifying force, taking him down in an instant. Both Squidward and Patrick were quickly transformed into zombies, joining SpongeBob's army and leaving the Krusty Krab defenseless. When the news reached Mr. Krabs, he was devastated. For once in his life, he wasn't thinking about money. Instead, he was consumed by the loss of his friends, Patrick and Squidward. Fueled by grief and anger, Mr. Krabs made a decision: he wouldn't let SpongeBob get away with this. For the first time ever, he put aside his love for money and focused on something else: revenge. Mr. Krabs went into the hidden basement of the Krusty Krab, a place filled with old, mysterious equipment and weapons. He put on a suit of armor and armed himself with a powerful chemical weapon. Swearing to himself that he'd stop SpongeBob no matter the cost, he prepared for battle. As he emerged from the basement, the sound of approaching zombies grew louder. SpongeBob was now standing in front of the Krusty Krab, his terrifying zombie face twisted into a menacing expression, with his massive zombie army behind him. Mr. Krabs, armed and ready, stepped out to face them. The streets of Bikini Bottom had turned into a battlefield. Zombies charged at Mr. Krabs from all directions, but he fought them off with determination and bravery. One by one, he managed to take them down, but he knew the real fight was yet to come. Finally, he reached SpongeBob. The two stared each other down, Mr. Krabs, filled with righteous anger, and SpongeBob, consumed by mindless rage. The battle between them was fierce. SpongeBob attacked with wild, monstrous strength, while Mr. Krabs fought back with his weapon and armor. The fight was so intense that it pushed both of them to their limits. In a critical moment, Mr. Krabs managed to aim his weapon directly at SpongeBob and fire. With a deafening scream, SpongeBob fell to the ground. Slowly, his monstrous appearance began to fade, and he returned to his normal self. His eyes filled with emotion as he realized what he had done and the destruction he had caused. Filled with regret, SpongeBob, with Mr. Krabs' help, began working to restore the town. One by one, the zombies were brought back to normal, and Bikini Bottom started to recover from the nightmare. But for SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs, the memory of that dark day would never fade. Bikini Bottom returned to its usual cheerful self, but the lesson they had learned stayed with them forever. Sometimes a single bad decision can lead to unimaginable consequences.